CBS Young and the Restless spoilers. There in the Newman executive suite was always colder than the rest of Genoa City, a deliberate chill that kept visitors on edge. Victor Newman stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, his silhouette cutting a sharp figure against the skyline. He wasn't looking at the city, he was looking through it, visualizing the chessboard of his latest campaign. "You are predictable, Diane," he murmured to the empty room, his voice a low rumble. "You always think you are the hunter, never realizing when you have become the prey." Victor turned back to his desk, where a small, unassuming silver fountain pen lay on the mahogany surface. It was a chaotic week for the Abbotts. The feud between the families had reignited over Chancellor, and tensions were high. Victor knew that in times of crisis, people clung to the familiar. He had observed Diane Jenkins for decades. He knew her patterns, her desperate need for control when her world threatened to spiral. And he knew that if Jack were to suddenly vanish, Diane wouldn't sit by the phone weeping. She would run. She would hunt. And that was exactly what he was counting on. The kidnapping itself was executed with surgical precision. It happened not in a dark alley, but during a transition, a moment of calculated confusion. Jack Abbott had been leaving the athletic club, his mind likely preoccupied with Billy's latest corporate gamble. He never saw the black van, nor the two men who moved with the efficiency of ghosts. There was no struggle, no shout, just a sudden absence where a man had been. By the time the sun began to set over the Abbott estate, the silence was deafening. Diane paced the living room, her heels clicking a frantic rhythm on the hardwood. "He's not answering call," she said, her voice tight, bordering on a snap. She gripped her phone so hard her knuckles turned white. "Jack never turns his phone off. Not now. Not with everything happening with Victor." Carl looked up from the sofa, his brow furrowed. "Maybe the battery died, Mom. Or he's in a meeting with Billy that went long." "No." Diane shook her head, her instincts screaming, "I feel it. Something is wrong." She moved to the foyer table, where Jack's briefcase from the morning had been left. He had swapped it for his gym bag before heading out. Her eyes landed on the silver pen he had left beside it. It was a vintage piece, one they often passed back and forth to sign documents, a small sentimental token of their partnership. She picked it up, clutching it like a talisman. It was the only piece of him she had in this moment of rising panic. Unknown to her, deep inside the barrel of that pen, a microscopic circuit had just engaged. The warmth of her hand, combined with the specific motion of her gripping it, completed the connection. Miles away, in a dimly lit control room at the ranch, a single red dot blinked into existence on a large monitor. Victor Newman sat in his leather chair, a glass of tequila resting near his hand. He watched the screen, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. It was a cold, satisfied expression, the look of a grandmaster who had just watched his opponent move their queen exactly where he wanted it. "Right on schedule," he whispered. He had planted the device days ago, during a brief, tense encounter at the club where he had accidentally knocked Jack's papers to the floor. A simple sleight of hand, swapping the pens. He knew Diane had a habit of using Jack's things when she was stressed, wearing his sweaters, using his office, holding onto his tokens. It was a psychological tether he had banked on. The dot on the screen began to move. Diane was leaving the Abbott mansion. Diane drove with a reckless determination, the silver pen clipped to the breast pocket of her blazer. She was heading to the airstrip. If Jack wasn't in the city, Victor might have moved him. She had to check the flight logs. She had to check the Newman private hangar. She was going to storm the gates of hell if she had to. "I will find you, Jack," she muttered to the windshield, tears of frustration stinging her eyes. "I won't let him win." She pulled her car up to the perimeter of the private airfield, the tires screeching on the gravel. It was dark, the area illuminated only by the harsh security floodlights. She stepped out, the wind whipping her hair across her face. She marched toward the security booth, demanding answers, demanding to see logs. She didn't realize that she was the only thing being logged. Back at the ranch, Victor pressed a button on his intercom. Now, the large screen on the wall shifted, the map view minimized, replaced by a live feed. It wasn't a camera at the airfield, but a digital broadcast he was initiating. Victor typed a command. The location data from the pen, Diane's exact coordinates at the Newman private airstrip, was instantly uploaded to a public server. Disguised as a security breach leak that would ping every major news outlet in Genoa City. The headline he drafted was simple, brutal, and humiliating. Diane Jenkins caught trespassing at Newman Airfield in desperate search for missing husband. He leaned back, watching the chaos unfold on the local news feed within minutes. Reporters were already scrambling. He had not only trapped her, he was about to make a spectacle of her desperation. Diane's phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again, and again. A torrent of notifications. She looked down, confused, and saw the headline. She saw the map. A precise red pin showing exactly where she was standing. Her blood ran cold. She looked around the empty airfield, the realization hitting her with the force of a physical blow. There were no guards stopping her. There were no logs to find. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the silver pen. It felt heavy now, heavy with betrayal. Victor, she hissed, the name tasting like ash. She had led herself right into his spotlight. By trying to save Jack, she had proven exactly what Victor wanted the world to see, that the Abbotts were flailing, panicked, and dancing on his strings. Suddenly, the large digital billboard overlooking the highway adjacent to the airfield flickered. The ad for a local car dealership vanished, replaced by a stark black screen. White text appeared, scrolling slowly, visible to Diane and anyone driving by. "You cannot save him, Diane. You can only lose." Diane stared up at the screen, her chest heaving. It was a message not just for her, but for anyone watching. A declaration of total dominance. Victor stood up in his office, buttoning his suit jacket. The game was far from over, but the opening move had been a masterstroke. He walked to the window, looking out toward the distant lights of the airfield. "Let this be a lesson," he said to the night. Checkmate. The storm outside the Newman Ranch was nothing compared to the tempest brewing within the Abbott family. Rain lashed against the reinforced windows of the main house, a rhythmic drumming that did little to drown out the suffocating silence in the tack house where Carl Abbott paced. His phone clutched in a white-knuckled grip. For weeks, the pressure from Victor Newman had been a physical weight, a vice tightening around Abbott and the Abbott legacy. Victor wasn't just maneuvering for corporate leverage, he was hunting. He had fabricated a narrative of corporate espionage and gross negligence, painting Jack and Diane not just as incompetent, but as criminal liabilities. The threat of arrest had hung over their heads like a guillotine blade, and tonight, the air felt sharper, colder. "You can't just sit there and let him win, Carl." Diane's voice echoed in his memory, a frantic whisper from their meeting an hour ago. She had been desperate, her eyes wide with a fear he rarely saw in his mother. She believed there was a digital file recording or a doctored ledger hidden in Victor's private server in the main house study that would prove he was framing them. Carl stopped pacing. He looked out at the sprawling, illuminated fortress of the main ranch. He knew his father, Jack, would forbid this. Jack was trying to fight this through legal channels, through boardrooms and handshakes, but Victor didn't play by those rules. Victor played for blood. "If I don't act," Carl muttered to the empty room, "we lose everything." He grabbed his jacket, the decision settling in his gut like a stone. He wouldn't let his parents go down for something they didn't do. He had to buy Diane time. Inside the main house, the atmosphere was oppressive. Victor Newman sat behind his mahogany desk, the dim light of a single lamp casting long shadows across his face. He wasn't working, he was waiting. He took a sip of tequila, his eyes scanning the security monitors that lined the wall of his study. "You're pushing them too hard, Victor." Nikki's voice came from the doorway, soft but laced with warning. Victor didn't turn. "I am merely exposing them for what they are, my baby. The Abbotts have always believed they are above the consequences of their mediocrity. Tonight, they learn otherwise." "Jack is not a criminal," Nikki insisted, stepping into the room. "Jack is a desperate man," Victor countered, his voice a low rumble. "And desperate men make foolish mistakes." As if on cue, the lights in the study flickered. Carl moved through the shadows of the stables, the smell of wet hay and horses filling his senses. He knew the layout of the ranch better than almost anyone outside the Newman family. He also knew that Victor's security team, while formidable, relied heavily on the perimeter sensors. His plan was reckless, born of adrenaline and panic. He needed to trigger a perimeter breach on the south side, the furthest point from the study, to draw the guards away. It would give Diane the 5 minutes she needed to slip into the side entrance and access the terminal. He reached the junction box near the generator, With trembling hands, he pulled a multi-tool from his pocket. "Come on," he whispered, sweat mixing with the rain on his forehead. "Just a spark." He jammed the tool into the exposed wiring, intending to short the external floodlights. Snap. A spark didn't just fly, it exploded. A blinding flash of blue light erupted, followed instantly by a deafening, oscillating screech that tore through the night. Carl stumbled back, blinded. He hadn't just cut the lights, he had tripped the silent alarm's failsafe, triggering a full-scale lockdown alert. "No, no, no," Carl hissed, scrambling into the bushes as heavy boots pounded against the pavement nearby. "Breach in Sector 4, go, go," a guard shouted, his flashlight beam slicing through the rain. Carl's heart hammered against his ribs. He had wanted a distraction, but he had summoned an army. And worst of all, the distraction was in the wrong place. The system hadn't just alerted the guards to the south, it had locked down the entire grid, sealing the exits. Diane Jenkins froze in the hallway outside Victor's study. The sudden wail of the siren made her jump, her heart leaping into her throat. She was dressed in black, clutching a small flash drive, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "Damn it, Carl," she whispered, realizing the plan had gone catastrophically wrong. She turned to flee, to retreat back through the terrace doors, but the electronic locks engaged with a heavy, mechanical thud. She was trapped. The double doors to the study flew open. Victor Newman stood there, silhouetted by the lightning that flashed outside the window. He didn't look surprised. He looked satisfied. "Going somewhere, Miss Jenkins?" Victor asked, his voice cutting through the noise of the alarm like a knife. Diane spun around, backing away until she hit the hallway wall. "Victor, I can explain." "Explain?" Victor stepped forward, the tequila glass still in his hand, calm amidst the chaos. "You break into my home in the middle of the night, while your son attempts to sabotage my security grid. There is nothing to explain." Behind Victor, Nikki appeared, her hand covering her mouth in shock. "Diane, what have you done?" Before Diane could answer, the front doors of the ranch burst open. It wasn't the police yet, it was Jack Abbott. He was soaked to the bone, his face pale with terror. He had realized too late what his wife and son were planning and had raced over to stop them. "Victor," Jack roared, rushing into the foyer, water dripping from his trench coat onto the pristine marble floors. "Stop this, let her go." Victor chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. He gestured to his security team, who were now dragging a struggling Kyle in from the side entrance. Kyle's face was bruised, his eyes filled with shame as he saw his father. "Dad, I'm sorry," Kyle choked out, held firmly by two guards. "I tried to. I messed up." "Jack," Victor said, his voice dropping to a dangerous baritone, "how fitting of you to join us. The whole family, reunited in their incompetence." "This was a mistake, Victor," Jack pleaded, moving toward Diane, who was now trembling. He wrapped an arm around her, shielding her. "They were scared. You've been backing us into a corner for weeks. You can't blame them for snapping." "I can," Victor said coldly. "And I will." He pulled his phone from his pocket and pressed a single button. "Chief of Police, yes, I have intruders. Multiple. I want them processed immediately. Yes, Jack Abbott is here as well. He appears to be the ringleader." "Ringleader?" Jack shouted, his face reddening. "I just got here to stop them." "You are here," Victor said, stepping closer, his eyes boring into Jack's. "You are on my property. Your wife was caught attempting to steal corporate data. Your son destroyed private property and bypassed a security firewall. And you are the patriarch who condoned this. Madness." "I didn't condone anything," Jack spat. "It doesn't matter what you say, Jack," Victor replied smoothly. "It matters what the evidence shows. And right now, the evidence shows a coordinated attack by the Abbott family on the Newman estate. Reckless, dangerous, criminal." Diane sobbed into Jack's chest. "Jack, I'm so sorry. I thought we could find the proof." "It's okay," Jack whispered, though his eyes betrayed his own terror. "It's going to be okay." But it wasn't. Sirens from the GCPD wailed in the distance, growing louder, overlapping with the ranch's alarm, which finally cut off, leaving a ringing silence in the foyer. "You planned this," Jack accused, staring at Victor with pure hatred. "You knew they would try something. You baited them." "I merely left the cheese out, Jack," Victor said, turning his back on them to pour another drink. "The rats did the rest." The heavy oak doors swung open again, and uniformed officers swarmed the entryway. Paul Williams wasn't there. He had retired long ago, but the new chief was a man who owed his election to Newman's support. "Mr. Newman," the chief nodded, then turned to the Abbotts. "Jack Abbott, Diane Jenkins, you are under arrest for breaking and entering, attempted corporate espionage, and malicious destruction of property." "This is insane," Jack yelled as an officer grabbed his arm. "I didn't break in, I walked through the front door." "Save it for the judge," the officer said, snapping the cuffs onto Jack's wrists. The metallic click echoed through the cavernous room, a sound of finality. Another officer grabbed Diane. She didn't fight. She looked at Kyle, her eyes filled with tears. "Don't say anything, Kyle. Call the lawyer." "Mom," Kyle surged forward, but the security guards held him back. He wasn't being arrested, not yet. Victor had seemingly decided that leaving Kyle free to watch his parents be hauled away was a crueler punishment. "Victor, please," Kyle shouted, his voice cracking. "Take me. It was my idea. I set off the alarm. Let them go." Victor turned slowly, taking a sip of his drink. He looked at Kyle with a mixture of pity and disdain. "You are a child playing a man's game, Kyle. Look at what you have done. You wanted to be the hero. You have only succeeded in destroying your parents." Kyle slumped in the grip of the guards, watching helplessly as Jack and Diane were marched out into the stormy night. Jack looked back over his shoulder, his eyes locking with Victor's one last time. There was no defiance left in them, only a deep, crushing defeat. The heavy doors slammed shut, leaving Kyle alone in the foyer with Victor and the silent judgment of the Newman portraits staring down from the walls. "Get him out of my sight," Victor commanded the guards, waving a hand dismissively at Kyle. As Kyle was shoved out into the rain, the full weight of his failure crashed down on him. He fell to his knees in the mud, the rain soaking through his clothes, mixing with the hot tears streaming down his face. He had tried to save them. He had tried to be the son they needed. Instead, he had handed Victor the very weapon he needed to bury the Abbott legacy for good. Inside the warm, dry study, Victor Newman watched the police cruisers fade into the distance. A small, satisfied smile played on his lips. "Checkmate," he whispered.